13 plus deep lessons from the book, Getting the Love You Want. Number 1. What makes a happy marriage? It is a question which all men and women ask one another. The answer is to be found, I think, in the mutual discovery, by two who marry, of the deepest need of the other's personality and the satisfaction of that need. Number 2. In recent years, scientists from various disciplines have labored to deepen our understanding of romantic love, and valuable insights have come from each area of research. Some biologists contend that there is a certain biologic to courtship behavior. According to this broad evolutionary view of love, we instinctively select mates who will enhance the survival of the species. Men are drawn to classically beautiful women, ones with clear skin, bright eyes, shiny hair, good bone structure, red lips, and rosy cheeks, not because of fad or fashion, but because these qualities indicate youth and robust health, signs that a woman is in the peak of her childbearing years. Women select mates for slightly different biological reasons. Because youth and physical health aren't essential to the male reproductive role, women instinctively favor mates with pronounced alpha qualities, the ability to dominate other males and bring home more than their share of the kill. The assumption is that male dominance ensures the survival of the family group more than youth or beauty. Thus, a 50-year-old chairman of the board, the human equivalent of the silver-backed male gorilla, is as attractive to women as a young, handsome, virile, but less successful male. Whether we like it or not, a woman's youth and physical appearance and a man's power and social status do play a role in mate selection. Number 3. When you hear the words psychological and emotional damage of childhood, you may immediately think about serious childhood traumas, such as sexual or physical abuse, or the suffering that comes from having parents who divorced or died or were alcoholics. And for many people, this is the tragic reality of childhood. However, even if you were fortunate enough to grow up in a safe, nurturing environment, you still bear invisible scars from childhood, because from the very moment you were born, you were a complex, dependent creature with a never-ending cycle of needs. Freud correctly labeled us insatiable beings, and no parents, no matter how devoted, are able to respond perfectly to all of these changing needs. Number 4. In their attempts to repress certain thoughts, feelings, and behavior, parents use various techniques. Sometimes they issue clear-cut directives. You don't really think that. Big boys don't cry. Don't touch yourself there. I never want to hear you say that again. We don't act like that in this family. Or, like the mother in the department store, they scold, threaten, or spank. Much of the time, they mold their children through a subtler process of invalidation. They simply choose not to see or reward certain things. For example, if parents place little value on intellectual development, they give their children toys and sports equipment, but no books or science kits. If they believe that girls should be quiet and feminine and boys should be strong and assertive, they only reward their children for gender-appropriate behavior. For example, if their little boy comes into the room lugging a heavy toy, they might say, "What a strong little boy you are." But if their daughter comes in carrying the same toy, they might caution, "Be careful of your pretty dress." The way that parents influence their children most deeply, however, is by example. Children instinctively observe the choices their parents make, the freedoms and pleasures they allow themselves, the talents they develop, the abilities they ignore, and the rules they follow. All of this has a profound effect on children. This is how we live. This is how to get through life. Whether children accept their parents' model or rebel against it, this early socialization plays a significant role in mate selection, and, as we will soon see, is often a hidden source of tension in married life. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, you probably will not see us again. If you have, congratulations, you are growing every day. Number 5. Many people have a hard time accepting the idea that they have searched for partners who resembled their caretakers. On a conscious level, they were looking for people with only positive traits, people who were, among other things, kind, loving, good-looking, intelligent, and creative. In fact, if they had an unhappy childhood, they may have deliberately searched for people who were radically different from their caretakers. They told themselves, "I'll never marry a drunkard like my father," or "There's no way I'm going to marry a tyrant like my mother." But no matter what their conscious intentions, most people are attracted to mates who have their caretakers' positive and negative traits, and typically, the negative traits are more influential. Number 6. When does romantic love end and the power struggle begin? As in all attempts to map human behavior, it's impossible to define precisely when the stages occur. But for most couples, there is a noticeable change in the relationship about the time they make a definite commitment to each other. Once they say, "Let's get married," or "Let's get engaged," or "Let's be primary lovers," even though we still see other people, the pleasing, inviting dance of courtship draws to a close, and lovers begin to want not only the expectation of need fulfillment, the illusion that was responsible for the euphoria of romantic love, but the reality as well. Suddenly, it isn't enough that their partners be affectionate, clever, attractive, and fun-loving. They now have to satisfy a whole hierarchy of expectations, some conscious, but most hidden from their awareness. What are some of these expectations? As soon as they start living together, most people assume that their mates will conform to a very specific but rarely expressed set of behaviors. For example, a man may expect his new bride to do the housework, cook the meals, shop for groceries, wash the clothes, arrange the social events, take on the role of family nurse, and buy everyday household items. In addition to these traditional role expectations, he has a long list of expectations that are peculiar to his own upbringing. On Sundays, for example, he may expect his wife to cook a special breakfast while he reads the Sunday paper, and then join him for a leisurely stroll in the park. This is the way his parents spent their Sundays together, and the day wouldn't feel right unless it echoed these dominant chords. Meanwhile, his wife has an equally long and perhaps conflicting set of expectations. In addition to wanting her husband to be responsible for all the manly chores, such as taking care of the car, paying the bills, figuring the taxes, mowing the lawn, and overseeing minor and major home repairs, she may expect him to help with the cooking, shopping, and laundry as well. Then she too has expectations that reflect her particular upbringing. Number 7. In despair, people begin to use negative tactics to force their partners to be more loving. They withhold their affection and become emotionally distant. They become irritable and critical. They attack and blame. "Why don't you? Why do you always? How come you never?" ? Quote. They fling these verbal stones in a desperate attempt to get their partners to be warm and responsive, or to express whatever positive traits are in their imagos. They believe that if they give their partners enough pain, the partners will return to their former loving ways. What makes people believe that hurting their partners will make them behave more pleasantly? Why don't people simply tell each other in plain English that they want more affection or attention or lovemaking or freedom or whatever it is that they are craving? I asked that question out loud one day as I was conducting a couples workshop. It wasn't just a rhetorical question. I didn't have the answer. But it just so happened that a few minutes before, I had been talking about babies and their instinctual crying response to distress. All of a sudden, I had the answer. Once again, our old brains were to blame. When we were babies, we didn't smile sweetly at our mothers to get them to take care of us. We didn't pinpoint our discomfort by putting it into words. We simply opened our mouths and screamed, and it didn't take us long to learn that the louder we screamed, the quicker they came. The success of this tactic was turned into an imprint, a part of our stored memory about how to get the world to respond to our needs. When you are frustrated, provoke the people around you. Be as unpleasant as possible until someone comes to your rescue. Number 8. When you are immersed in the power struggle, life seems chaotic. You have no reference points. You have no sense of when it all started or how it will end. But from a distant perspective, the power struggle can be seen to follow a predictable course, documented stages of grief in a dying or bereaved person, but this death is not the death of the real person. It's the death of the illusion of romantic love. First comes the shock, that horrifying moment of truth when a window opens and a wrenching thought invades your consciousness. This is not the person I thought I had married. At that instant, you assume that married life is going to be a continuation of the loneliness and pain of childhood. The long-anticipated healing is not to be. After the shock comes denial. The disappointment is so great that you don't allow yourself to see the truth. You do your best to see your partner's negative traits in a positive light, but eventually the denial can no longer be sustained, and you feel betrayed. Either your partner has changed drastically since the days when you were first in love, or you have been deceived all along about his or her true nature. You are in pain, and the degree of your pain is the degree of the disparity between your earlier fantasy of your partner and your partner's emerging reality. If you stick it out beyond the angry stage of the power struggle, some of the venom drains away, and you enter the fourth stage, bargaining. This stage goes something like this. If you will give up your drinking, I will be more interested in sex. Or, if you let me spend more days sailing, I will spend more time with the children. Relationship therapists can unwittingly prolong this stage of the power struggle if they help couples negotiate behavioral contracts without getting to the root of the problem. The last stage of the power struggle is despair. When couples reach this final juncture, they no longer have any hopes of finding happiness or love within the relationship. The pain has gone on too long. At this point, approximately half the couples withdraw the last vestiges of hope and end the relationship. Most of those who stay together create what is called a parallel relationship and try to find all their happiness outside the partnership. Very few, perhaps as few as 5% of all couples, find a way to resolve the power struggle and go on to create a deeply satisfying relationship. Number 9. We all have an understandable desire to live life as children. We don't want to go to the trouble of raising a cow and milking it. We want to sit down at the table and have someone hand us a cool glass of milk. We don't want to plant seeds and tend a grapevine. We want to walk out the back door and pluck a handful of grapes. This wishful thinking finds its ultimate expression in relationships. We don't want to accept responsibility for getting our needs met. We want to fall in love with a superhuman mate and live happily ever after. The psychological term for this tendency to put the source of our frustrations and the solutions to our problems outside ourselves is externalization, and it is the cause of much of the world's unhappiness. Number 10. Once a couple has made a commitment to stay together and work on their relationship, the next logical step is to help them become allies, not enemies. It's fruitless to take two people who are angry with each other and try to lead them along a path of spiritual and psychological growth. They would spend too much time trying to knock each other off the road. In order to make the surest and fastest progress toward their relationship vision, they need to become friends and helpmates. But how is this going to happen? How can couples put an end to their power struggle when they haven't had the opportunity to resolve their fundamental differences? Love and compassion are supposed to come at the end of the therapeutic process, not at the beginning. I found a solution to this dilemma in my studies of the behavioral sciences. I learned that I could influence the way a couple feels about each other by helping them artificially reconstruct the conditions of romantic love. When two people treat each other the way they did in happier times, they begin to identify each other as a source of pleasure once again, and this makes them more willing to take part in intensive therapy. Number 11. When you accept the limited nature of your own perceptions and become more receptive to the truth of your partner's perceptions, a whole world opens up to you. Instead of seeing your partner's differing views as a source of conflict, you realize that they are a source of knowledge. What are you seeing that I am not seeing? What have you learned that I have yet to learn? Relationships give you the opportunity to be continually schooled in your own reality and in the reality of another person. Every one of your interactions contains a grain of truth, a sliver of insight, a glimpse into your hiddenness and your wholeness. As you add to your growing fund of knowledge, you are creating reality love, a love based on the emerging truth of yourself and your partner, not on romantic illusion. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, you probably will not see us again. If you have, congratulations, you are growing every day. Number 12. Negativity is any thought, word, or deed that tells your partner, "You're not okay when you think what you think or act the way that you act." In essence, you are rejecting your partner's otherness. We sometimes feel the need to negate our partners when they do or say something that makes us uncomfortable. Usually, they are just being themselves, but from our point of view, they are threatening an image that we have of them, or they are failing to meet an unspoken need of our own. Typically, negativity makes its first appearance in a love relationship as denial. "I can't believe you did that. You never said anything like that before. You can't really mean that. You're not that kind of person." The fact that your partner is a separate individual with wishes and needs different from yours is starting to dawn on you, and you feel threatened. Your denial is a desperate ploy to hold on to your illusions. Say it ain't so. When your partner continues to depart from your projected image, the tendency is to bring out the big guns, one by one. Your arsenal includes shame, blame, criticism, invasiveness, avoidance, and finally, blanket condemnation. First, you shame. How do you think that feels? "You ought to be ashamed by the way you treated my friend." In essence, you are trying to make your partner feel guilty for being who he or she is. Then you blame. "You were late, and that made me really upset. That's why I haven't been talking to you. If you hadn't been so angry, we would have been able to settle the matter in very little time." When you blame, you put all the burden of your frustrations on your partner. Next, you begin to criticize your partner's character traits, in addition to his or her unacceptable behaviors. "You are so insensitive. You are untrustworthy. You always think about yourself first." You are attempting to paint your partner not only as the source of all your frustration, but to make them into a bad person as well. A more subtle ploy is to invade your partner's psyche and act as if you had X-ray vision. That is not what you really think. The reason you're so crabby is that you are obsessing too much about work. "If you'll just listen to me, I'll tell you what you need to do." The final weapon is absolutism. "You never listen to me. You always leave the hard work for me. That's just the way you are. Every time I make a simple suggestion, you have a big fit." It's no wonder that our partners feel depressed, stay late at work, drink too much, don't want to make love, or stay up late by themselves. Being with us is not a safe place to be. They experience being chopped up into little pieces, dissected, and rejected. This is a form of emotional annihilation. At the base level, it expresses contempt. No one can be healed or grow in such a toxic environment. To get the love we want, we need to eliminate negativity in all its forms. There's another good reason to stop negativity. The negativity that we express toward our partners comes back like a boomerang and affects us as well. That's because the old brain does not know whether the negativity is being directed outward or inward. This theory has been backed up by studies showing that when one person yells at another, the person being yelled at produces more of the stress hormone cortisol. That's to be expected. But perhaps more interestingly, the same increase in cortisol is seen in the angry person as well. One could say that any negativity that we direct toward others is a form of self-abuse.